Welcome to this training for the International and European Law Department regarding the Remindo digital testing environment. This training will focus on the person responsible for approving the matrix and test. The role of the person approving the matrix and test is to ensure that the actual test can be executed in Remindo together with the proctoring software, and also to verify that the exam meets the assessment policy requirements. The final role of the person approving the matrix and test is to confirm that the scheduling of the exam has been done properly in Remindo. 4 tools are necessary to carry out this task. Firstly, the exam preparation chart for Remindo, which is an offline chart found on the T drive that contains all of the questions that are to appear on an exam. There's also a checklist for quality assurance that serves as guideline for checking the aspects of the exam relating to assessment policy demands and standards. You must also have permissions to use Remindo as an author. Your permissions are to 2 different Remindo environments. The Remindo Tests Manager, which is for test creation, and the Remindo Tests, which is for scheduling of the test. The links are provided here, but also in the resources that are accompanying this video. Firstly, to gain entry to the first environment, use the first link here. You may need to authenticate yourself prior to entering this environment, as is done with Osiris or with the T drive. If you have any questions about gaining entry, please contact a key user. We will now look at the interface of the tests environment. Once in Remindo, in the Remindo Tests Manager, you should come to a screen that gives you 2 choices, questions or tests. Those choices are also above, questions, tests, along with a notification bar for any notifications about the tests that you are involved with. Your profile is also available here. In this case, as the person approving the matrices, you will spend your time in this testing or tests bank. This is the inside of the test area. The test area in the left side has all tests that appear that you have access to. And this user has access to this course, Introduction to EU Law, and these are the courses and the tests that have been produced within this course. Notice that you can change the course by using this icon if you had access to other courses. In this case, this user only has access to 1 course. If you press on one of the icons that are here, you will also get information on the right side. But let's first understand what we see on this left side. The left side has a matrix, which is designated by this box with 4 squares. You can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 matrices here. Let's click on a matrix to see what it looks like. The matrix has the information about the test. In this particular matrix, we see that the Introduction to EU Law final exam has 5 learning outcomes, which are listed here, and that there are 3 levels in Bloom's that are being tested. In this area, we can see how many questions are being tested from 1 learning outcome and 1 Bloom's level. For example, this 3 designates that there are 3 questions that are tests that are available for learning outcome 4, and that those 3 questions are at the level of remembering in Bloom's taxonomy. This number 1 designates that there is 1 question available to test this learning outcome number 3, and that 1 question is an applying on the Bloom's level of taxonomy. Altogether, this matrix is asking for 40 questions with the combinations here for an exam. The exam will have 6 remembering questions, 28 understanding questions, and 6 applying questions. It will also test 3 questions from the first learning outcome, 5 from the second, 4 from the third, 11 from the fourth, and 17 from the fifth. It gives you a picture of just how much is tested in a learning outcome, or what levels of Bloom's are going to be required in the exam. All matrices can be chosen based on the number of questions that are available that were placed in the question bank. Below each matrix, there are a number of exams. Exams are designated by this, what looks like a graduation cap. When you press on this, you can see the exam. Because our exams are all being done digitally, we don't make them valid for a PDF form, and for that reason we get a warning sign. However, we need to understand what this information tells us. So this entire section has every question that's on the exam, and it tells us what the question will, what question bank we can find it in, what level of Bloom's taxonomy is there, whether it's been approved for the test, and as we go through, we can see all of the questions that are being used and what level they are in Bloom's, and they are divided down by the learning outcome that they test. If we choose to use other parts of the menus that are here in the tabs above, we can see other aspects of this exam. So if we look at the settings, we can check this exam and make sure that it has been properly formulated. There are very important settings that we will talk about later. The Courses tab will let us know what course this is connected to, and the Preview tab will let us see the exam as it would appear to a student. Again, reminding ourselves that it's in a digital environment, so the student doesn't get to look at the exam exactly like this, but we can see how it will be produced to them, in the sense that they will first get a page with instructions. Then when they start the exam, they will see a question that looks like this here. Of course, they don't see the actual answer choice or anything like that. But the important thing about this area is that you can preview the exam as a whole. Approving a test in Matrix also requires you to gain entry to a second environment. That's the Remindo Tests environment, which is the scheduling and planning environment. Use this link to go there, and again, if there are any difficulties, please contact a key user. Let's look at the interface and learn how to navigate in the test planning scheduling environment. When you come to the planning environment, it should look something like this. If not, check the top tabs and make sure that you've chosen the Planning tab. It is here where you have an opportunity to either plan an exam or to check to make sure that the exam was planned properly. The tabs up here allow you to plan a test moment. That would allow you to actually schedule an exam that was in the test environment in Remindo. Or you can also, in the time after an exam has run, you can create a review moment for the exam in this environment. For the moment, what's important is how to find an exam and make sure that it's on the schedule. You can look at the calendars and see that there are moments where exams have been planned by looking at these triangles. The blue triangle means that it was a test moment with a fixed date and time. These red triangles are the review moments. There are no subscriptions at the moment, and there are no test moments spanning over a period of time. But these are some examples of how you might be able to schedule a test. Below you will see that there were 2 tests previously scheduled within this course. The important information that you see here are how many students actually finished the exam, which is here and here. You can also change the settings for the exam by editing here. And you can look at the list of students that are there for the test moment. All of these may be important to you as you're reviewing. Let's now look at how to review a matrix and a test in the Remindo test environment. Let's keep in mind that as we begin using Remindo, we only have some ideas of how we think this can be done, and therefore they are merely suggestions. As time goes and we understand this practice more in depth, we will likely change and amend the ways in which we review. As mentioned earlier, we do want to use some tools to help us review. One tool, of course, is the exam itself, the written exam that was available on the T drive. This is the exam preparation chart. This is just a sample, but this exam, as it would have been completed and approved, should also guide you through the approval process, as you may want to make some quick references to correct answers, learning outcomes, and Bloom's taxonomy levels as you go through the test and the matrix. We've also made a document called the Remindo Quality Assurance Checklist. And here, when you navigate to this section that says Matrix and Test Approver, which currently, as of April 2021, may be an assessment committee member, that might change. But we've put some ideas of what you might be looking for as you look at the matrix and the test. So you might be looking at the settings and comparing it with the offline exam chart. You might also be looking at the Bloom's taxonomy levels. And the first page of instructions, you would want to check that to make sure that it has all of the correct information. It may be necessary to also go into the second environment that we looked at and make sure that it's available. The exam is available to the BRV staff so that they can make sure students are connected with the course, and that the exam is actually scheduled on the calendar and that there have been students assigned. We will look at that more in depth in a moment, but this particular checklist helps you think about the things that you should be considering as you take a look at the exam and the matrix in the Remindo setting. Now, as I said, we're still working with our practice and how we want to do this review. But just as a guideline, what I would suggest is that you come into the area where the tests are located, you find the matrix for the test, and you click there and you take a look at whether this setup makes sense based on the chart that you have of the course itself. So do you notice that all of the learning outcomes that you see on the exam preparation chart, are they here? Are they visible? Are there questions that are available in the categories that can be chosen from? And have they actually been chosen for the exam? I would check the total number and make sure the total number here is also equal to the total number of expected exam questions as is said in the chart. But you also have a chance at this point to look at the exam itself. So that's this part underneath. And when you take a look at that, I think it's useful to look inside of the preview section. I find that to be the most useful because you get to see whether the cover sheet has all of the information that's expected for an exam. For example, the total amount of minutes for the exam, the date that it's occurring, who the lecturers are, the title of the course, any kinds of additional material that you can consult, and also the dictionary. So these are all here, and you can double check them with one glance. I also think it's useful to go look at the questions themselves and make sure that they've been assigned an actual answer and points so that you know that this question actually fulfills and the requirements for an assessment. So that's how I would suggest going about the review within this environment. Now, if you were to find things that were not correctly done, you have an option to go to settings yourself and to change the things that were not correct. The settings normally are the most important thing in the exam. So if those instructions were not right, you can make those changes here by editing this category and adding the correct instructions. Copying and pasting is all that needs to be done. Once you click in here, you get the option to redo this. So you can actually just delete this whole thing, select it and delete, and add what needs to be added. And don't forget to save the new one on the way out. The other things that can be changed are the duration. If the duration were to be incorrectly entered, you can change that. Just for your information, even though this isn't something that you would be working with, you should also recognize that the course code and the name of the exam are also things that can be changed here. And all of the most important of the things to double check is this. If you do not see this box ticked, the exam cannot be delivered to students. So this box must be ticked. When it's being proctored by video surveillance, you also have to make sure that this says no if you're using proctor exam. So those are two major points that have to be double checked to ensure that the test is carried out correctly. So if any changes had been made, then I would have had the chance to save it. Now I've changed environments and I've come into the area where you plan the actual test or schedule the test. And here I want to point out a few things that are important. For example, if you were to look here and check the planned tests and you didn't find the test that was supposed to be the test that you were reviewing, then you would want to actually fix the test moment. This can be done by saying create new test moment and filling in the information that is needed here. Then you would have to put in the Osiris code and you would have to not assign a location because it's an online course. You want a fixed time. If not, you would have to toggle and put down something else. but we normally have a fixed time. And then you can tell it when to start by pressing here and setting a time and a date. The time is below. You give early access. Yes, it's 30 minutes. That's a normal thing in Remindo. And you want to limit it to a specific location when the IP addresses actually work. So now you save and go to the next thing. Now it's been saved. It's going to ask you more questions about the subscription settings. So you want to actually keep the settings as they are. Give no more things, no more time. Keep these settings. So we're not using Safe Exam, and we're not protecting with the LTI for now. And then you keep all of these settings in place, and you keep these settings, and you save and close. When you save and close, you should now see that it appears now on this schedule as a test. Double check that your test also has students, and you can do that over here in this area. Have students been added? If not, you need to get in touch with the BRV or the faculty. And you also should make sure that there's supervisors there. So those are the lecturers. If they're not there, talk to the key users. We have seen that when approving a test and matrix in Remindo, you are working in two different environments, the tests environment as well as the planning environment. When you go into the test environment, you can see the matrix for the test, and you can double check to make sure that the learning outcomes as well as the Bloom's levels are evident, and that there are questions in each of the Bloom's levels and related to the learning outcomes. You can see whether the matrix has been set up for the total number of questions that's expected, as you've seen inside of the exam preparation chart. And then you can look at the test itself and preview the questions, make sure that they have been assigned a correct answer choice and a correct allocation of points. You can also see the settings and go into the settings for the test if you need to change anything. In those settings, it's important to know that the box that allows for the test to be delivered to test players has been ticked, and also that it has been set up properly for the proctor exam environment, including not allowing full screen. After verifying things in that environment, you need to then link in to another Remindo environment, which is the planning environment. Make sure that the test is actually scheduled on the calendar for the correct time. And if it's not, you have an option to create a new test moment and to schedule that exam.